right about that. I mean, trading back-to-back 2020 games is, it's not easy. That's up to, 7-8 hours of work. So after the Perth game, my brain was pretty fried. So I didn't touch anything, in the first innings. And then I think there were evens to chase, which looked like value because Sixers bat pretty deep. But a bit of clumsy running between the wickets. I think there was a couple of run-outs. So that really annoyed us because it seemed like every time Sixers price touched 1.6, they'd lose a wicket, go back to evens, which is where we backed him. So it was just a complete roller coaster. I don't know if there was a right time or wrong time to ever get out the trade because it was just absolute chaos right down into the death overs. I think I got out. When was it? I think, who was it? Was it Josh Philippe or Jordan Silk? I think they hit 3 boundaries in a row. Who was it?
Jordan Silk hit 3 in a row.
That's it, yeah.
And that last wicket partnership with him and Ben Dwarshuis.
Yeah, so I didn't stick around for that long. Like I hedged up, I think, after Silk hit 3 boundaries. I thought, this is enough. I'll take my money here. And then I think I said it in our group, in the Discord, that I'm going to back the tie. I think I backed him at around 20 and it came all the way into 6-1. So I got my liability off and I had a free bet on the tie as well. So this game went right to the wire. I know a couple of guys in the group let it run, but I couldn't find it in myself to do that. The last thing I wanted to do was, carry that sort of stress, 2 hours of work. I didn't want that going down the drain. So I was happy to, sacrifice what would have been a really big win. I think I was around 250, 300 quid up at one point when they hit 1.4, I think it was 1.5 before they lost a couple of wickets. And then I ended up hedging up for, I think, around 70 quid after those 3 boundaries, by Jordan Silk. But again, like I said, there's really no right or wrong answer for how you trade a game as volatile as that. It's as long as you make green, anything green in a game like that, you've done well. And it's so easy to overtrade. You see a boundary, you want to get back in, then a wicket falls, and then before you know it, you overstake. And if it wasn't for that, for that last ball 6, I think it was a low full toss, and we got a bit lucky. Would have been dead in the water. So.
Yeah, correct. And even thinking that last over, there was that wide that was, I feel it was a very harsh call, and that's not called a wide. That's the game's tied. So
No,
you never know. And it's funny. Like we both said, that it could have either been a trader's dream or a nightmare, depending on how you viewed it. And for me, that 2 hours of work, I made 50 quid for that 2 hours of work. And I remember one of the guys in the Discord group chat from the premium subscribers made 50 quid in 20 seconds.
Yeah. He did. I think he backed Sixers at 4. I think this was right before Jordan. Yeah, it was right before Jordan Silk hit 3 boundaries in a row. So he did really well to do that.
Absolutely.
But like you said, you never want your trades to ride on luck. And I think going forward, my thoughts is don't overtrade. I think we did overtrade. Well, at least speaking for myself, I overtraded. Watching 2 games is just exhausting. But you can only make a handful of good decisions. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to make the surefire moves in each game. So just tracking the data, looking at, who's scoring the runs, who's got the best strike rate, who's taking the wickets, and then just building a pattern, just putting the pieces of the puzzle together and then wait for things to take shape, as we enter the middle stage of the tournament, and then, potentially ramp up the stakes when the opportunity is right. But I made the mistake of, I don't want to say going large, but staking with full amounts early on, and I got burnt, like I said, on the Hobart game. You live and you learn. We've got plenty of games ahead. I'm slightly in front. I know you are too. But, it's good to chat with other traders and just review the week and find out where you went wrong and what you've done right. For the most part, I think we've read the games right. I think we've been caught off guard a little bit with the pitches. It's just a question of just reining in the betting, watching the innings unfold, and then getting involved in the latter part. At least for me, anyway. I don't know about you. What thoughts do you have going forward?
No, what you said about that first week and building a bigger picture is absolutely right. And talking to, other people that have watched the game, because I think the easy thing or the most exciting thing to do is always to look forward, look in the future and be like, this is what I think is going to happen. But I think what's more important is actually looking back and being like, what did happen and how did you behave and how did you react to what did happen? And actually looking back and reviewing it, because I think in the review part of the process is where all the gems sort of come from. And, whilst, we're just chatting about the games or the week that has just been, there's so many lessons from where we went wrong and where we went right, because if we can sort of rectify where we went wrong and look at the mistakes that we made in that first week and, incrementally get better week in, week out, then, I mean, that's all you can ask for. And a big, a longer tournament such as the Big Bash is one of the perfect places to do it, because there's a month of cricket solid every single night. So, for me, I'm glad to have survived that first week and be a bit ahead in that week one. And, I'll look to sort of start to ramp things up slowly now and then sort of hit a crescendo that New Year's period, and then really motor home that last 2.5 weeks when we've got a really good understanding of on how the tournament's playing out.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, like I said, to summarize, I think obviously the Hobart loss was my biggest loss, but the most disappointing loss wasn't even that. My most disappointing loss was, like I said, the game at Adelaide against Melbourne, because we both knew the pitch wasn't playing how it was supposed to, but we kind of, had that doughy-eyed optimism, when we saw Maxwell smashing boundaries and we saw them go down to 1.35 early on. Obviously, with hindsight, hindsight's 2020, we should have got out. We knew it was a difficult chase, and we were punished. We threw our profits away and ended up at a small loss. But like I said, going forward, it's just trust your eye, trust what you see. And if you do that, you'll know when the market is overreacting, like the case I just gave. So, just take your money and run. And, just focus on making a few good decisions a game.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing I've sort of taken away from this week as well is something I have to always remind myself of, which is that don't just necessarily fall in love with a big name. Like
100%.
Play the scoreboard. Don't play the names, because for all the big names such as, your Tim David, your Glenn Maxwell, the guys that can take a game away from you, I think realistically, looking at those sort of names, they're not going to win you game in, game out. I think that the guys like the big names, like your Tim Davids and your Glenn Maxwells, I think realistically, guys like that aren't there. They're not blue chip stocks, right? They will win you 2 games of tournament, I think. I think they'll win you 2 games of tournament where they just go nuts and take a game away from the opposition. But majority of the time, what's going to happen is these guys are going to score like a quick fire 20 or 12 rocks and get out. And I think that a lot of us seem to see the big names and get attached to the big name. Because even that Melbourne Stars game, I look at Maxwell hitting those 2 sixes, and I look at if Maxwell got out at that stage, which he did, those odds almost flip, right? Like it didn't take long for that $1.30 to go all the way out back to 4s. And I think there's going to be value taking on big names, because it's not always like, while there are massive big names in this tournament, it's guys like Mitch Owens cutting up yesterday despite all the international players around him. I think that's something I've got to really remember is to be brave enough to take on the big name, but more importantly, play the scoreboard, not the names that are out in the middle.
Yeah, and in that Adelaide game in Melbourne, the market gets so hung up on names, like you said, because I think Lloyd Pope, the market was really hesitant. Sorry, the market kept coming in whenever he was at the crease because of what he did in that 19th over against Sydney. But, he went and won man of the match. He took 2 important wickets against Melbourne. So, it was a completely different performance. And same thing with Hobart. They were scuttled for 77 and then they go and beat Perth today. And with Sydney Thunder today, talking about big names, it feels like there's that David Warner effect and, all this hype around Sam Constas. I think that's why there was a slightly shorter price on Sydney Thunder, who should have really been the underdogs in this game. So you make a good point about that. Don't get too hung up on the names. Just focus on what's in front of you, and yeah, just try and decipher what's value and when to attack. So I think that's the main takeaway going forward.
Absolutely, and even in that game, like you look at the guys that won the game in the end, it wasn't your James Vince and your big international players. It was guys like Jordan Silk. Yeah, like
Jordan Silk, and Philippe, Jack Edwards, and Ben Duanche.
Sure, they've been around for ages, but they're your sort of domestic guys that are always there or thereabouts.
Mm.
You know, and even that first innings, like you had your big names: Warner, Sam Constas, Shafane Rutherford, Daniel Sam Billings, and the guys that got it done was Bancroft and
Oliver Davies,
Ollie Davies. Yeah, like it's one thing I got to keep reminding myself of is to give everyone here credit, because if you're good enough to play Big Bash, you can have your night. Like Lloyd Pope took a 4 for the other night.
Mm. Yeah.
So everyone at this level is good enough, and yes, there is that next tier of guys like your Maxwells that can take a game away. But yeah, be brave enough to take them on, because I think more often than not, you'll be right, and the market will overreact to the real superstars of the game. So that's something I'm going to take forward into week 2 of the comp.
For sure, yeah. Still early days. We've still got so much to get through. Just got to pace ourselves, and like I said, make a few good decisions a game. Take our time, and yeah, we should be good moving forward. Hopefully in a more consistent week coming this next week. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the week in review. We know what our strengths are, we know what our weaknesses are, we know what to work on, and just be patient going forward. Yeah,
couldn't agree more, mate. Couldn't agree more, and looking forward to week 2 of the comp.
Brilliant, me too. So I know it's early for you. I'll let you crack on with your day, but thanks for joining on the pod, and I'll see you this time next week. So guys, if you do want to be part of our conversation, we converse daily with other traders in the Discord group. So I'll leave the link in the bio. You guys can feel free to join. Join the premium letter on the newsletter. We do lots of reviews, previews, and we're going to review our trades at the end of every week, as we've done so here. So don't forget to hit that like button, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.